Hey everybody, welcome to day 3 of the Summit 3. I'm here with Kevin Purge Godek again, just doing a little bit of a wrap up of what we saw today, what we can expect from tomorrow, and just kind of looking into the little intricate bits of some of the matches that we saw today. So I guess kind of like going straight into it, some heroes that a little bit came to prominence. I'd say like we didn't really see a lot of them. We did see a fair bit, but I feel like they were a little bit more effective today. Klink's Lina. Lina, of course, being played to great effect by Xiaowei in their series against IG. Yeah. I guess like give me a little bit of like insight, I guess, into like why you think this hero is seeing a little bit more play. I think we saw it a little bit as a support in last patch, but this patch we're still seeing like a little bit of it.
Yeah, she's either played as a farming role or a support, which is kind of cool to see if the hero's viable in both ways. We saw a lot of teams play her as support. We even saw Fear play her as a carry role earlier today, but the main reason she's just good is because as a support she scales really well for into the late game, assuming you do have farm. She's kind of like a line in that way. She requires a setup, but if you're good at ganking, then you can transition really well. And I mean, she's got 2 nukes, one of which does a disable, and then if you get 6, then you have even more nuke damage. Yeah. And then if you do scale well and you get an Aghanim's, then all of a sudden you're doing pure damage through BKB, which makes her really relevant. That's one of the big reasons we didn't, in the past, we didn't see her ever played as a support or even as a core. She was a little scary because as soon as they give BKB, you're like, gotta wait 10 seconds now. And her Fiery Soul wasn't as good then. It got buffed a couple times, so she didn't even have physical damage to compensate for going through BKB. So enough buffs, and especially the pure damage eggs one is really why we see her more. Yeah.
Also, you know, once you get a Eul Scepter, it's just a pretty easy setup for Light Strike Array, and then, you know, the rest of your damage.
But even one of the games that we saw today, it was a Rubik with Alina, and there was the LGD playing that, and they just did lift into stun, and they did it perfectly every time, and that's a little hard to do, so they did a really good job communicating that. But you don't always need the Euls, but it definitely helps you get the solo kills, and the disruption is good as well because you know, it's hard for you to land your stuns. Sometimes just to take somebody out of a fight who's gotten you out of position is really good.
Something that we saw actually in that LGD versus IG thing was like the commentators mentioned that they did the exact same thing twice. Like the first kill of the game, essentially, buy a smoke, go with Rubik and Lina, have Rubik lead with left, Lina, you know, then with the mid lane hero would be able to secure first blood. How do you determine like how much like obviously it's determined I guess by the heroes that you draft, but like how do you kind of decide to commit that much resources, I guess, to an early kill that might snowball the game, I guess?
It's basically about the mid matchup, I think, and also with the offlane heroes, because by taking your supports and going for a mid gank, you're sacrificing, you're saying that the offlaner is going to get a lot more experience than normal, because usually you want to keep that guy level 1. I don't remember who it was that game, because there wasn't a lot of fixture on watching the offlane, but they ganked mid because it was a Shadow Fiend on IG versus LGD's Razor. And I was sitting with a couple players while they were talking about, I think it was maybe Puppy, and he was like, oh, well, that matchup's pretty even, so if you get a gank off like that, you've done your job, you can go back and do other things. Maybe Puppy was just casting. We sat for like one set with Puppy, and then the game after he casted, so it's all blending together in my mind. But
it was the EGC9 we were saying with Puppy.
Okay. Yeah. So he was casting. So he was casting then. So just getting the first gank off gives Razor a bit of an advantage. Maybe he'd have a boots advantage over the SF, or maybe he'd have a bottle advantage over the SF. At the very least, he'd have a gold advantage. That's last hits as well. It also resets his last hits. It also makes him more scared, and not to mention first blood for the supports, which gives them faster boots, which allows them to do other stuff on the map. So if first blood hasn't happened yet, I guess it's pretty good. But you do have to gamble with the offlaner getting more experience. So if it's an offlaner that maybe does a lot with more experience, maybe like a Dark Seer or something, then it can be a little scary. If you have like a carry, for example, that's melee and bad against Darkseer, then maybe you want to focus the supports on zoning the Darkseer. But maybe if your carry is okay against Darkseer, then it's okay giving him some levels first. If it's like a Luna or a ranged hero or a Klinks, you're like, whatever. Like he can still, even if this Darkseer does good and as a 1v1, then the supports can still leave it. So that's the gamble that you have to play off of, and I'm sure that all factors into the drafting.
I guess let's talk a little bit about Darkseer, just because we did see Zai play it a little bit early on in the tournament. I think he did play it during the first C9 set. He did pull off some pretty good plays on it, despite EG losing that set. We're seeing it a little bit more. I'm definitely noticing it being banned a lot more. So I guess like, are you seeing anything that kind of like, just in like playstyles, I guess, are you seeing anything that would like make it a little bit more of an attractive kind of hero to play?
Well, it's partially hero buffs, I think, and partially just
the wall at 45 seconds.
Yeah, that one's really big because it saves some of your skill points. But the other one is just that Darkseer has a lot of lane presence. It helps you win your lane basically just by contesting the carries farm. And we've seen some matchups where like they have to commit 2 supports to zoning the Darkseer, because otherwise, like we said, it would counter the carry. And if you counter the carry, then he's getting less farm, and then his early impact's weaker, and then you take advantage, and then you take tower advantage, and the game's over.
Shifts the balance of resources, I guess, into a situation where you're more favorable, obviously. Something that we were seeing, I think, to great effect was he was double ion shelling or just ion shelling the Razor in that first, LGD. Game.
Do you mean the Razor or the Ember Spirit?
I think it was the Ember Spirit.
Ember Spirit game was really strong, like because then you had the Flame Guard, which is like 40 magic or something, or 60. I don't remember what it is. I never played a hero. It's something like 60, somewhere around there. It's like pretty high. But with Ion Shell on top of that, you're doing like 120 magic. That's like a less track ulti for no mana essentially. So it was a pretty good combo. And yeah, it just synergizes really well with upfront melee tanky heroes, and then from there you have also good team fight with Vacuum Wall. So it's like you have the lane pressure, you have the team fight, and that's kind of all you need right now. The ganking can be done by your supports or other heroes like that, because we're getting a lot of ganking supports, less than passive supports, and then it all kind of depends on your hero distribution rules, but Darkseer fits into it pretty well, it seems like.
Speaking of, I guess, Puppy earlier, something that he mentioned during the EGC9 game is like the reason that we're seeing a lot more like kill happy like early games that transition into like short games later on, because the kill disparity is just so high and the gold distribution, that kind of stuff, is that because the creeps have a lower gold value attached to them, they're worth less. And he was saying something like, I think he was talking about like SF or something like that, where you'd flash farm the jungle and assume by a certain point that you'd have a harder to ask or something like that, the carry, and then you wouldn't be getting the same kind of distribution or the same amount of expected gold. So it makes sense to go after like Roshans and towers and kills that their gold hasn't really been affected.
Yeah, and the other thing you could get from that is that if anything, it's a buff to the early game push in all ways, because like you said, the towers and the pushing rewards and the Rosh rewards are all static compared to the previous patch, but the creeps are less. So if a team does get ahead and they take those tactical advantages, not only do both teams have like a lower initial gold, maybe like 5-10% lower, but then it makes for a bigger percentage difference, which means the game could end. So
does that put a greater focus on like the raw abilities of heroes rather than their potential to scale into late game?
Yeah, levels are really important if you have no farm. It's extremely important. It essentially is your strength, is how much damage you can do without needing items, and that's what skills do. That's why supports are strong, that's why where you look for value in supports, they should be able to do a lot with just skill points and little farm, and it's mostly based on your levels. So yeah, levels are very important still. Getting levels efficiently is good. You could probably argue that levels are slightly more important now because gold is slightly harder to come by, but that's very difficult to determine because it multiplies by like how well you initiate your ganks and so many other things.
I think that's something that fits all those roles, like you were saying. That's something that's like a little bit skill dependent and ultimately like needs very little farming to be effective. Is Earthshaker. We're seeing a lot of Earthshaker.
Especially in offlane, mostly offlane Earthshakers, I feel.
Yeah, that was something that was kind of like, IG had that little bit of surge at the end of the second game of LGD, where it just seemed to be Earthshaker. Like the commentators were making a very big point of like, it's all on Earthshaker in order to get that initiation, be able to get the fissure off, the Echo Slam, the Enchant Totem, or is Enchant Totem the passive?
Enchant Totem is second skill, third skill is Aftershock.
That's what I meant, sorry.
He was definitely important, and they played that really well. They were moving around the map. I kind of felt like a bit of a boring game to me because it felt a little patient, but if you really watched what IG did, they had some really, really close, smart movement where they'd spot where the enemies are, and they'd sit there until two heroes got a little bit too close, and then that's when Earthshaker would always go in, and that's really important. Like a couple times, his chain of stuns got initiated, and that's really important against Earthshaker. If you can stop at least like one or two of his spells, that's like 3 seconds of stun duration on two heroes, which is going to lose you a fight. But they did a really good job trying to get kills with that, and I think that's why we are seeing Earthshaker offlane be relevant, is just vision control and then initiating to stun multiple heroes for 4.5 seconds during a fight means, I mean, even if you only do, 700 magic damage tops,
you're usually giving enough room.
Yeah, because everybody else jumps in, blows them up, and you can swing a
Hopefully win. Hopefully win. I guess kind of moving on to tomorrow's matches, we have two Western teams versus 2 Chinese teams. It was something that I was mentioning. I was like, oh, it kind of sucks that we're seeing that region, but then you pointed out at least we don't get like 2 regions in the finals kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe that's not fair to say because the two Chinese teams in the finals, they usually deserve it. That happened at Starladder, and fans, and at least I'm sure the Chinese fans at home are really excited about that. But usually where the lands are, that at least the ones that I've been in Western places, they're not as excited about that, and it makes me a little sad because I'd rather have like at least something very clear, distinctive lines to cheer for. I think that's a little bit more fun. So I mean, it still could be top 2 China or top 2 Europe, because I think it's a new bracket, so they can still lose another game yet still win, I believe. So we'll see.
Do you have any kind of predictions? I guess we have Secret versus EG. We have IG, or not IG, LGD versus Vici. Do you have any kind of like ideas of how those will kind of swing?
I feel like Vici's the better team, but I think LGD is really good right now. They play a little bit different style than everybody else, is kind of what it feels like to me, but I'm not completely sure. I haven't seen that many LGD games. Definitely none before this tournament. So, and the other one's Secret EG. I think that could go either way. I'm not really sure how that one will go. I think Secret is looking really good right now.
Yeah.
But I think EG had a really good day today, and
do you think
they have good strats. I feel like they practice smarter and have smarter things ready to go more than any other team. At least the Western ones. I'm not so sure about the Chinese one.
Do you think that we're going to see any kind of like, for me, I feel that we're going to see a lot of contested picks between Secret and EG, just because of that, the Dark Seer that we were talking about. We've been seeing both like, a lot of Shadow Fiend this entire tournament. Like, I feel like we're going to kind of see a little bit of trading back and forth of like what they usually have in terms of compositions, I guess.
Possibly, maybe Chen is the main hero that's really contested between those two guys. Maybe something like a Wisp as well. Both teams use Wisp pretty regularly. Maybe a bit less on EG. I guess they don't play Wisp that much, but they do. Actually, maybe they don't play Wisp very much. You almost never see AY playing Wisp, and I don't think it's PPD. So maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they have that much overlap. The main heroes that we see EG picking are like Quap and stuff like that.
Quap.
So S4 Quap and Sumail playing Quap a lot. In a Storm, we saw S4 playing Storm at some point in a safe lane. We've seen Sumail playing Storm. So maybe feels like the cores are maybe like the carry cores are the ones that are more contested, and Shadow Fiend going for both teams very often.
I guess last question would be like, you were mentioning the Chen was a very contested pick, and we're seeing a lot of other people pick up Chen. Mostly, I guess, again, for the the pushing power to be able to the disables and the utility and that kind of stuff. We saw a little bit of Clinks and we saw a little bit of Bounty Hunter trying to disrupt that experience. I guess that ties back into that whole argument we were talking about, where because experience means so much in the early game, what does it mean to a Chen at least to be behind on experience?
For a Chen, it's pretty impactful. Getting 6 is pretty big because sometimes 200 HP on any gank is enough to get a double kill back in your favor, especially when you have TP supports. The Bounty is a good counter to Chen usually. I've seen some games where it just completely shut down the Chen. The game we saw earlier today where C9 picked Bounty versus Chen, it went terribly, didn't work out very well. And No-Tail got nothing out of it. But I think I was sitting with Puppy that match, and he said that No-Tail was doing a little bit badly. He should have completely blocked the camps. Instead, he kind of just sat around and sapped. And at that point, if you block all of his camps and you body block the 5th one, then he has to go to the enemy jungle, and then you follow him there because you have boots and he doesn't, and then you can chase him down, which completely screws him. Yeah, and then you can keep vision. He's closer to the enemy. So I think it was just that maybe No-Tail played that one badly, at least from what Puppy said in that initial. But that kind of opened my brain a little bit. I thought that was really interesting.
Was that the game where there was like, it was like the wards were like really close together? I want to say it was that one, or maybe because I remember the Russian casters going a little bit nuts at it. That there was I don't know if that was the LGD or IG game, because they were trying to block the camps with the sentry wards and the radiant jungle.
That was LGD IG.
Oh, okay, never mind then.
I believe that was when Chuan was playing. I think AUI had a large camp and a medium camp to farm from. He dewarded the medium camp by the large camp, and he just jungled those 2 camps. And he got a little behind, but he eventually caught up, and No-Tail couldn't do anything. He didn't hit 6 forever. So
it's got to be frustrating when you pick something specifically to counter something else and it doesn't work, and you're just like,
yeah,
useless.
It was just a very slight execution error. Like, small things make a big difference. Like, imagine if he body blocks. Maybe he was late to body block the camp. Maybe he got distracted and was late to body block the camp, and bam, AY summons a Centaur, and now he can't just trade hits with the Chen anymore because there's a Centaur there that can essentially do double damage to the Bounty. And something as small as that could completely change the game, because once he has a Centaur, he kills a small Centaur. Now he's getting experience, now he's getting gold, and Bounty might not be able to steal too many of those creeps, and Then Chen's got a gold advantage. They're sharing experience, but he's got gold advantage and he has a centaur, and then the whole thing just snowballs, and Bounty didn't accomplish what he's supposed to do, and he did sap the experience, but the ganks definitely didn't transition at all. So, and I don't remember who their mid hero was that game, but maybe it was like a Storm or something, and he wasn't able to get
For the third game, I think it was Storm Sumail. I could be wrong. For the last game?
Yeah, I think it was the last game.
Yeah.
That was the one where the Bounty didn't do very well.
Yeah.
It was Storm the last game, wasn't it? So it was like Storm mid. Maybe he didn't have good chance to gank him mid or something, and therefore failed on the Chen, couldn't get a gank off. What do you do? Like, you're screwed at that point.
See, just listening to that entire thread of reasoning is why I like Dota, because there's one little thing about not body blocking a camper, just like missing, for me, I'm terrible at the game, so missing one pull messes up the creep equilibrium, which means the offlaner gets a level, which means that your entire tri-lane falls apart, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Just those tiny little mistakes. Obviously, they're a little bit more recoverable in pubs because the opposing team does make mistakes, but at this level, it's those little tiny body blocks do matter.
Yeah, it's the same way I felt when Puppy was talking about it. He's like, oh, then he goes to your jungle, and then you have boots and he doesn't. And I was like, wow, and then you just chase him down and you've got boots and he doesn't get anything then.
It's just this ripple effect that just comes out.
And in the early game, that stuff's really important. If you keep somebody one for a long time, then the decision making gets weird, and if your decision making is delayed, then you're less efficient than you should be, and then you are screwing up a game. Like, the average Dota player can play any average game, but if your opponent tactically outplans you and executes it correctly, in weird situations like that, then you have a huge disadvantage.
And with a such an early game focused meta, that really causes some problems.
Yep, definitely does.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out another video with myself and Purge. Really appreciate you guys watching. If you want to check out more live recaps, live stats, recaps, articles, interviews like this one, you can check out the Score Esports and check out our app on the iOS store and the Android marketplace. Thank you guys so much for watching again. Hope you guys have a good day and a good rest of Summit.